Today's reading is Why Do Devotees Fall? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. An endlessly fascinating question is, why did Judas fall after receiving the extraordinary blessing of being accepted into the inner circle of Jesus Christ's disciples? For Judas was one of the 12 apostles. Yet he betrayed Jesus and earned for himself the opprobrium of Christendom for all futurity for his sin. We find Judas reprimanding Jesus just days before that betrayal. Jesus, aware that his disciples would soon be facing with his death the supreme tragedy of their lives, allowed Mary to express her devotion by anointing his feet with costly ointment. This act of wanton waste, as Judas saw it, awakened indignation in that disciple. Why was not this ointment sold for 300 pence and given to the poor? This, he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and kept the purse and bare what was put therein. Then Jesus said, "Let her alone. Against the day of my burying hath she kept this. For the poor always ye have with you, but me ye have not always." Doubt not the power of delusion. Respect it and indeed fear it, though not in the sense of cowering before it. For as Yogananda said, one is not safe until he attains a nirvikalpa samadhi, the state of final union with God. Judas, through attachment to money, opened his consciousness to subtle influences which may be called satanic, that drew his thoughts toward other related attitudes. The importance of worldly power, for instance, and worldly influence. The Bhagavad Gita gives a graphic explanation of how easily the mind can be drawn downward once it begins to feed on wrong attitudes. In the second chapter, Shri Krishna states, if one ponders on sense objects, there springs up attraction to them. From attraction grows desire. Desire, impatient for fulfillment, flames to anger. From anger, there arises infatuation, the delusion that one object alone is worth clinging to the exclusion of all others. From infatuation ensues forgetfulness of the higher self. From forgetfulness of the self follows the generation of the discriminative faculty, and then when discrimination is lost, there follows the annihilation of one's spiritual life. At the first thought of delusion, Paramahansa Yogananda said, "This is the time to stop it." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Happy Sunday to all of you who are here in presence. I cannot tell you how happy we are that finally to have guests again here present. So thank you for having been the first ones to have again blessed Ananda with your presence. And we hope that also Ananda can give you some blessings too, so that you can bring something home. And happy Sunday to all of you who are following us online. I'm MAYADEVI and this is NARYA. So here Swami was saying not to doubt the power of delusion, to respect it, to fear it. And, and that lecture of a Bhagavad Gita is a little bit tough. It's not something that we always listen to, with the happiness, or nobody wants to think of how we can fall. But we also want to think that if somebody like Judas, who must have had quite a certain stature, spiritual stature, to be one of the 12, if we could fall, so we can fall too. And there is a beautiful story that Yogananda used to tell, that Swami talks about, and maybe in the book Super Consciousness. And it's the story of Narada. Narada, after long and profound meditations, he had a great vision of God, a direct experience of God, a magnificent one. And God tells him, look, you can ask me a gift for a gift. And Narada, maybe I think it was a little bit, you know how it can happen to all of us when we have reached something at a certain level, on a spiritual level. We think, how is it possible that not everybody has the same thing? How is it possible to fall into the illusion? And so Narada asked, how is it possible? Let me know. Show me, please. How is it possible that a devotee could fall into delusion? And God, in the form of Vishnu, said, so come, Narada, come with me. We'll take a stroll. And then they take a stroll, and it's really hot. And it's a kind of a desertic area where they were walking. And after a while, Vishnu says, Narada, I'm very thirsty. There is a village there. Why don't we stop there and get a glass of water? And Narada said, yeah, that would be a good idea, a glass of water, and then I'll get one myself as well. So he goes, and he knocks at the door of the first house. And the door is opened by a beautiful girl, and there's an immediate recognition from previous lives. He starts to get lost into her eyes, and he talks about his life, and she treats him as a special guest, and he stays there. And the more he looks at this girl, and his heart gets open and more open. And so her father offers him a job, and then he starts to work, and then after a few years, he gets married to this beautiful lady, and then he builds a house, and after a while, the children come, 3, one after the other, and he becomes a very wealthy man, and he creates for himself a beautiful life, and he's very happy, and is completely in love, and everything is going very well. And suddenly, in this village was next to a river, and at some point, a, a, a flood takes place, a flash flood, that it just happens suddenly, where you don't have much time, basically. So he finds that his house and his animals and everything that he had built completely gone. And while his wife and his 3 children, and the little one was on his shoulder, the other 2 hold by hand. The wife was trying to go to a higher spot. They were trying to escape the flood. The water was a lot, big quantity, and it was fast. And so he is not able, that under the water there was something, and he trips, and the little one falls out of his shoulders in order to save the baby. He lets the older ones. It tries to save the baby, and then it tries to save the other two, but the current was so strong and they were all taken away. And when the wife sees all of this, she abandons herself in the water. So when he realized that everything that was his happiness, it was gone. So he was also about to allow himself to drown. But after a moment, he thought maybe he thought he was going to die, but then he saw that around him was this brown thing, and he thought, what is it? And then he thought it's sand, and then suddenly he hears a voice calling him, Narada, Narada, wakes up, wake up. And he opens his eyes and sees Vishnu. Narada, half an hour ago I sent you to get a glass of water, and now I find you here sleeping. And this is a beautiful story, no? Don't you think? Because it shows us that it takes a second, a moment to be taken by Maya, and Maya is very bold and tricky, because even it's the force created by God to keep us in the illusion. Otherwise, the creation would be finished in a moment. Maya catches you in those moments where maybe you feel too much sure. And even when it often happens to me, like with my husband, in the moment that we had decided to move to America and to live at the Ananda village for a few years, right in that moment, he received a job, the job that he always wanted to have. It was an independent, would have given him independence. It would have been his job, working for a nice company. It was perfect. And fortunately, this offer did not tempt us, but because it was obvious that we were meant to go and live at the Ananda village. But how many times did we say this? Somebody wants to move here, and but he falls in love or she falls in love, and for a while the person stays away from the project that she or he was planning to do. Or you think Maya is having fun this very moment because it's creating so much polarization, so much restlessness, and maybe is enjoying it so much, and it must be very happy. Yogananda said that when the first thought comes of a delusion, that's where we need to catch it and put an end to it right away. But how do we understand which one is the first thought? Narada knocked at the door. It was okay, but when he looked at the girl and looked into her eyes, he was already lost. So the moment was really fast. So as we know, when we go out from the attunement, that's when it happens. And that's something that the Bhagavad Gita shows us. And as I said before, it's a little bit scary. And I think that Swami put it here just to scare us a little bit, so that we don't feel like Narada and saying, oh, but now I'm safe. I've seen God, and maybe, I am a disciple. We are safe. And I would like to read this again, so that we can see what is the path that takes us away. So if one ponders on sense objects, there springs up attraction to them. From attraction grows desire. Desire, impatient for fulfillment, flames to anger. From anger, there arises infatuation. the delusion that one object alone is worth clinging to the exclusion of all others. From infatuation, and choose the forgetfulness of the higher self. From forgetfulness of the self follows the generation of the discriminative faculty. And when discrimination is lost, there follows the annihilation of one's spiritual life. So let's look at our lives and let's look carefully and try to notice these first signs, the first indications. And we must ask ourselves, am I maybe less happy interiorly than I used to be? Or maybe suddenly some desires for external gratifications are coming up. Maybe I get angry more easily, or maybe I'm more frustrated, impatient, not so calm interiorly, or have no contentment. Maybe I'm projecting all of these towards the outside and looking at the mistakes in everybody outside by criticizing the others. And probably if I look carefully at myself, my energy is low or lower than what it was, and I can see problems everywhere. Or maybe I'm afraid of my safety or for other things. Maybe I get worried for many things. If you see all of these things within you, then it's the moment to do something about it, to act. And Swami, in the book, The Rays of the One Light, where we read the lecture, the reading this morning, but there is a more complete book, that is called Rays of the One Light. And here Swami says some very important things. I must translate because it's not translated. The attraction of illusion is much stronger than what people realize. And the way to victory is not closing one's eyes and pretend that they doesn't exist, but instead is to live consciously in the thought of the presence of God inside of you, and to meditate every day and profoundly, and also offer your life up high incessantly as a channel for the divine energy, for the love and divine joy. And he says that in this warning that comes from the Bhagavad Gita, there is also a promise, because when a person concentrates herself on spiritual ideals, she or he always feels more attracted to them, and from that attraction grows the desires to live with these ideals. And the desires of living in a spiritual way develops an intense profound desire for God, and as such, a desire that puts the flame and avoids every impatience that could be an obstacle to get to him. So nothing is lost, and we have a lot of hope, just as the reading says afterwards. But we also must realize that yes, we fall, or or sometimes we slip, trip. Slip is not a fall, Swami would say. Slip is not a fall. So, for sure, we do slip quite often. But what is important is not to identify with this, not to say, oh, I was wrong, I'm bad, I'm not worthy, I'm a disaster, like sometimes people often say. No, do not ever identify with your slips. Instead, actually, it happens that after one slips in a good, quite deep way, it becomes quite embarrassed that it doesn't want to show himself so much anymore. For instance, in a community like Ananda, if something happens like this to a person, very often the desire comes to leave the community and for the fear of being judged, of being seen by the people. Or maybe you're a guest or you don't come here anymore because you think that we judge you in a wrong, in a bad way. But as Jesus used to say in the Bible, as when there was a scene that was about to stone the stoning of the woman who had betrayed her husband. Jesus said, "Who is without sin? Throw the first stone." Or another good saying is, another beautiful saying in English is, "Me too. I could be like this if it wasn't for God's grace." Every problem, every slip, every mistake that somebody does, probably we have done it ourselves as well. Maybe if not in this life, maybe in a previous life. We cannot judge, we mustn't judge, and nobody should be feeling judged because we are all, in a sense, a sinner. But in the sense, as Yogananda says, a saint is a sinner who never gave up. So we have made several mistakes many times. That's okay. It's part of the game. It's not something that nobody should be, not look at us anymore or ourselves as well, not treat us badly. This is something that happened in Mount Washington, where there was a nun who had left, not sure to do what, maybe enter a relationship or getting married and so on. And after a few years, she came back, and somebody said, "But how dares she to show your face here?" And she was very good. She said, "Huh, you want me to continue to venerate my mistakes? Because that is what would happen. Instead, this is a sign of a great interiority. If you are able to see where you were wrong, and you can accept that somebody corrects you, and you can say, yes, you're right, I was wrong, and then corrected this thing that you've done, and not to try to hide it, right? Because it's a normal human way of doing, to try to hide something, or pretend it wasn't you, or pretend that the thing never happened. Instead, say, yes, I was wrong, it went wrong, I wasn't thinking, who knows what I was saying when I did or said that. So do not identify with this. Don't say, oh, I am like this, but instead, go ahead. Do not dwell in your mistakes. Just go on. I always like this idea of the water going through under the bridge. The water that is already gone, you don't want to get it draw it back. You must go on. You don't want to make mistakes again. You want to change yourself and use all of that energy to create, as just as the affirmation says, everything that I will do today will create a better tomorrow. If I put my energy into the tomorrow, while I'm creating today the right action, the right attitude, so the tomorrow will be better. But if I'm always looking back and trying to go back to the old situation and so on, this is going this is really ugly. Instead, do not think that you must be perfect or infallible because that you need to be a master already. You could say, so in that case, what are you doing here if you're already a master? We are here because we're not perfect, and we are not yet masters. But what we want to do is to be honest, truthful, and open to having been gone wrong, to be wrong, and ready to be corrected. And if you are so open with no fear of making mistakes, life will find ways to help you understand where you're wrong, where you need to change direction. Those who did not have this kind of experiences while you are in an highway and you're driving, and maybe you're a little bit too relaxed, and suddenly there is a big loud voice, a voice that makes the whole car vibrate and wakes you up, and this kind of sudden, and then you correct the car and you enter again into the perfect center of the lane. So when in your life there are these sudden loud noises and vibrations, tremendous vibrations, something that really shakes you, these are the noisy bands, the noisy sounds. That's life that tells you, wake up, you must go back into the lane, into the inner attunement. And in that moment you can ask yourself, what was I doing when this sudden noise came? Where was I going? Was I leaving the central way, the main way? And when I go back to my attunement with the divine, with God and Master, I will see that maybe the situation, external situation, can change. Or maybe not. Maybe nothing will change outside, but inside, everything can change. And this is the important thing. And you can wrote to a disciple, if you allow me, I will kindly move every single thought of yours until it goes towards the right direction. And he also said, to those who think me near, I will be near. And again, we talking of being open, receptive, and ask for this help. Like NARYA said in the prayer, He will be there. He will be in our heart. And they will help us understand when we are going astray and losing the right direction. We will know. And this attunement is our highest gift, because as Swami would say, through this attunement, Master can guide you and can give you everything. And now, while we're doing the offer, we want to listen to a chant that a devotee wrote to Master, and Swami just slightly changed the words, but the melody is of Mayatri, it's her name. Oh Master, I'll tell you the words in Italian, but the English words are Oh Master, in the joy of the heart, oh Master, we find your love there. Now it's time to look at one reality here on earth and up on heaven. Everything was born from love. Love that helps us to fly over mountains and skies beyond the challenges and pain where peace will reign. Oh Master, in the joy of our heart, oh Master, let's find again your love. Our dreams, please you guide them to the supreme truth in that inner light that reunites us and God. Help us to find in every day, every thought, every flower, the joy that will help us fly and go towards freedom and truth, O Master, in the joy of the heart. O Master, let's find again your love.